Greetings, everybody. I'm Dave DeVore, and this video is based on two presentations I gave at my church, Redeemer Austin, in September of 2024. My topic was experiencing God through His creation, and my main goal was to highlight the intricate design that we see in nature, leading me to believe that our universe could not have come into being through some random set of circumstances, and I backed that up with biblical references. Whether you agree with this premise or not, I hope you enjoy the nature photos that I have been blessed to capture during the past year since my last presentation in 2023. I've been a serious nature photographer since at least 2012, shooting an average of 100,000 images per year. Here are 100 of my best images since last September. Enjoy. Our Bible tells us in the very first verse of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Thus we have a creator. It's been human nature ever since the beginning to tend to worship creation rather than the creator. We've gotten that backwards for many, many generations. The Gospel of John tells us that in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. We Christians believe that Word of God is actually Jesus himself, and that he created everything. St. Paul, in his letter to the church in Rome, writes, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people, who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." We're going to start out with pretty big creation. In past years, I've started out with really big creation, which would have been the Milky Way, telescope pictures. I haven't done any astrophotography or anything really large in the past year, so we're going to move on with pretty big creation. This is the full moon before dawn on the morning of Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. It looks much like a harvest moon because there was a lot of particulate matter in the air at the time. This picture was taken at Bitter Lake National Wildlife Refuge near Roswell, New Mexico in November of 2023, and it's sandhill cranes circling to come in for a landing on the water features not long before sunset as the rays were coming through the clouds. This picture is from Bosque del Apache National Wildlife Refuge near Socorro, New Mexico, about 75 miles south of Albuquerque. It's pre-dawn as there's a blast-off of snow geese when thousands of geese all lift off from the water after roosting overnight in unison, and the noise is absolutely incredible. This is also at Bosque del Apache a little bit later in the morning as some sleepyheads take off a little bit later. This is in the middle of the day at Bosque del Apache, a nice landscape with a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. The mountains there are absolutely gorgeous. I love the terrain, and all the fall colors were out last November. There had been extreme drought all year, and the water features at the park are filled up with very large pumps in anticipation of the geese and the sandhill cranes arriving. But there is not water there all year round. It's only during the winter season when the birds are there. I'm a commercial drone pilot, and I do a lot of photography and videography from the air. This picture is a sunset taken above my driveway in Wells Branch, Texas, a neighborhood of Austin. And there in the background is the Domain, which is a neighborhood that has lots of shops and offices. And the red lights and the white lights that you see are the expressway as darkness settles over the city and there's fire in the sky. This picture I call Angel Rays. This is also taken from my drone, and this is not long before sunset also. This is a cell phone picture from Lake Georgetown, taken from my boat in early September of this year. I just love the peace and quiet and the meditative mood that's there that time of morning. Here's another sunset taken from above my driveway, and the clouds, the colors, the golds are just spectacular. Here's another one that I call Fire in the Sky. This is a sunrise. Not long before sunrise, everything lit up like this before the sky got a little bit more normal. And this one also has lots of golds in it. It is a sunset, also taken from above my driveway. Now we're going to move on to animals in creation. This is a baby hippo with its mama in Nairobi, Kenya in June of 2024. And this is a baby rhino with its mama. And you can see that there are cattle egrets to the right section of the picture and a couple in the foreground. You can see their heads. Those birds will perch on the herd animals and eat the bugs off of them. It's a symbiotic relationship. This is a giraffe, also in Nairobi, Kenya in June. And this is a water buffalo with two red-billed oxpeckers on its back. These birds also will eat the bugs and other things off of the fur of herd animals like water buffalo, water bucks, gazelles, elands, any of the larger animals. And so they're very well tolerated by the animals because it's a good relationship. This is a deer in flight that I was able to capture with my camera at Berry Springs Park in Georgetown, Texas, earlier this year, and early morning light. The light is absolutely gorgeous in this one. This raccoon was at Pedernales Falls State Park. I was in the bird blind, and the volunteers had just put the bird seed out for the birds to come and get it. And this raccoon was eating the bird seed, and then he noticed the photographer and was not happy about it. Luckily, I had about a half an inch thick window between me and the raccoon, so nothing happened. And these are two horses out of about 15 or 20 that we saw when we were driving to New Mexico last November. There had been a rain the night before, and this very flat field had about 3 or 4 inches of water in it. And the horses were all out taking advantage of that nice cold water. Now we're going to take a look at some of the larger birds that I've been able to get pictures of during the last year. This is a sacred ibis taken in Kenya. It's a beautiful bird. We have ibises also down on the Texas coast, but not of this type. This one is only around Africa. And this is a male ostrich doing its thing. They're very, very strong. They've got a very strong kick, and they're pretty fast when they run. So you just don't want to have a problem with one of these or with a female that has young. This is an African fish eagle in flight. It looks very similar to our American bald eagle. And like our bald eagle, most of its diet is fish. So you find them near water features. These are roseate spoonbills that I saw down at the Texas coast in March of 2024. And here's a closer look at one that flew by. These are an absolute gorgeous bird. If you can get a picture of one coming in at sunset with the sun behind it, its wings all spread out. Just an incredible shot. I wasn't fortunate enough to get a picture like that this year, but that's one that you definitely go for when you're down on the Texas coast. This is a Texas black vulture, one of two kinds of vultures we have here in Texas. The other is the turkey vulture. And without them, things would be an awful lot less healthy. They take care of a lot of roadkill and carrion that happens along our highways and in the fields of Texas. These are two American white pelicans, also down at the Texas coast. And this is a great horned owl at Mills Pond in my neighborhood of Wells Branch. They've mated there for the last 6 or 7 years and had 2 or 3 young every year, but the tree that they always used for their nests was a victim of an ice storm last year and it fell. So I spotted this one in the spring and I spotted its mate, but none of the nature photographers in the area were ever able to find where they nested, but we're sure that they did. This is a great egret in Taylor, Texas at Murphy Park, which is an incredible rookery. There's many different kinds of herons and egrets there during the summer. There's several hundred birds. It's an absolutely amazing place. And this is that same great egret feeding their young. They go out and they fish early in the morning and get a belly full of small fish. And then the young ones beg for food, and the adult sticks its beak all the way down its throat, and they regurgitate the food into the little ones. Next, we're going to take a look at medium and smaller birds. This is what's called a murmuration of red-winged blackbirds. This was in Roswell, New Mexico last November. And this looks very much like a school of fish going back and forth in beautiful patterns. Who knows who the leader of a group like that is, but the way it flows, it ebbs and flows and goes back and forth is absolutely amazing. And if there's one, there's probably 1,000 birds in this flock. There are also cowbirds and yellow-headed red-winged blackbirds mixed in with these red-winged blackbirds in this shot. Here they are. They landed for a little while, and you can see how brilliant looking the yellow-headed blackbird is. The rest of these birds in this picture are red-winged blackbirds. The yellow-headed blackbirds and the cowbirds are larger than the red-winged blackbirds, and they will lay their eggs in a red-winged blackbird nest and then allow the red-winged blackbirds to raise their young. Their young are bigger than the other young, and quite often the young of the intruders will live, and the eggs that really belong there will not do well. Just a lesson in nature. And here they are as they do a murmuration again as they take off. And if you look closely in the middle of this picture, you'll see several of the yellow-headed blackbirds in there. You can pick out some of the cowbirds. They're a little larger. And quite a few red-winged blackbirds where you can see red and yellow on their wings if they're in the right positions. This is a white-eyed vireo that I got recently in the September of 2024. It's one of the first birds that an early migrator that comes through as the birds migrate from the north to the south and come through our area in Texas. You always hear these birds before you see them. They've got a beautiful song. And here is a rhino with cattle egrets on its back. and they're doing the same thing that the red-billed oxpeckers do. They're in a symbiotic relationship where they eat the bugs off of the larger animals, and the larger animals tolerate it because it's good for both of them. This is a double-crested cormorant at Mills Pond. We have two kinds of cormorants in Texas for the most part. There's another one called the neotropic cormorant that you see more down by the Texas coastline. This one was drying its wings. You can see the hooked beak that it has. That's used for spearing fish, catching fish. They can swim long distances underwater. You'll see them swimming along with their head above water. They will go below water and reappear maybe 50 or 100 yards away, oftentimes shaking a fish as they prepare to eat it. And this is a cardinal, a northern cardinal. Whenever people quit clicking on my pictures, this is definitely a winner. Many people love cardinals. When cardinals appear, angels are near, is a saying, and many people believe that. So they've just gotten it's an incredible spirit bird for many people. This is a green heron a split second after it caught this fish. You can see the water still dripping off of the fish. This is one of my favorite species. They can get into many different shapes. They can be tall and skinny, or they can get all the way hunched down and look like a basketball, and anywhere in between. They can look slick back, or they can have a mohawk or ruffled feathers, and you'll see several more pictures of these as this presentation goes on. This is a blue grosbeak at Commons Ford Ranch down near Lake Austin. And it's molted a little bit. Molting is when the birds have a complete changeover of their feathers every year from the beautiful spring plumage. As it gets dull, they start losing their feathers in a particular order so that they can still fly. And then they regain the different feathers in much brighter colors. So they're looking really good for the next mating season, the next spring. These birds are blue and they have beautiful orange bars on their wings. This one is not nearly as brilliant as it would be in the springtime. This was taken probably in July or August of this year. This is a red-tailed hawk at the Mueller Airport area where we used to have our city airport before they moved it to Bergstrom International. And it's been turned into a park with all kinds of water features. And this hawk was fighting off red-shouldered hawks that didn't like it being in their territory. It kept looking around. They kept trying to dive bomb it. And it was a pretty entertaining morning, but what a beautiful bird. These are American avocets down at the coast of Texas in early March of this year. And here's another green heron. I call this one Elvis. He's got the mohawk going on, and he looks completely different than the one that you just saw recently that caught the fish. They're very entertaining, all the different looks they can give you. This is a yellow-billed cuckoo, a really hard shot to get out in the open. They're almost always in thick bushes, thick brush, heavy shade. It's really special when you get a good picture and good light where you can see most of the bird exposed like this. These are black-bellied whistling ducks on a baseball backstop in Taylor, Texas at Murphy Park. I call this one All My Ducks Are in a Row. This is a house finch, a common bird you'll find on your bird feeders. This is last spring out of Pedernales Falls State Park. And in the springtime, the males have this beautiful red to them. This is an eastern bluebird. I got this picture in Ohio at my brother's in January. And it was in its very best colors. What a beautiful bird. This is a male cardinal that is either at the end of its molting, where it's starting to get all of its feathers back with better colors, or it may be a juvenile male that's getting his colors for the very first time. It's pretty hard to tell from this picture, but at any rate, it's going to look much better in another month or so. This is last January at the Mueller Airport area where there's lots of water features, and this is called a ringneck duck. You can see kind of a copper colored ring around its neck that is not real noticeable. It's usually easier to tell what one of these is by the pointy head that it has, the yellow eyes, and the beautiful markings on its bill. But Audubon and people in the 1800s, when they first identified these birds, always used dead specimens so they could make paintings, since they didn't have cameras to take a picture like we do today. And on a dead specimen, that copper-colored ring neck, or that ring below there on the neck, is much more prominent and much more noticeable, and that's how they got the name way back when. These are two red-shouldered hawks at Berry Springs Park in Georgetown, Texas on Valentine's Day. The one on the left is much larger. That's the female. The females of most raptors are quite a bit bigger than the males. And I was taking pictures of her when the male showed up and they started snuggling a little bit on Valentine's Day. It was getting pretty soon it would be mating season. So I'm sure that he was trying to impress her. This duck here is called a northern shoveler, and more often than not, you see them with their rear ends up in the air in shallow water as they feed on vegetation on the bottom of water features. And you can see that it's all wet because it's just popped up to get a breath of air for a few seconds, and soon it will be backside up again. Gorgeous bird. This is called a painted bunting. It should be the state bird of Texas. This one is in its molting period where the colors aren't quite as pronounced, but they have a beautiful blue head with an orange eye ring, orangish red on their chest, and then they've got yellow and green on their wings. And you'll see a few more of these during this presentation in different poses. This is a yellow warbler, another early migrator that I've gotten a picture of within the last month, probably early September of 2024. When you see them in the wide-eyed vireos, you know, at the orioles and other warblers are not very far behind. I call this one Don't Talk With Your Mouth Full. This is Mama Cardinal at Pedernales Falls State Park eating some of the birdseed that they had just put out. And here's another painted bunting, and they sing a lot, so you usually hear them before you see them. The males are not, these birds are not monogamous. The males may have as many as 6 or 7 females with their own nests, and he takes care of all of them. And so if you play a male song on a phone, when you hear one, he has to come out to see who that interloper is that's trying to get his harem. So you don't do this during mating season because you don't want to disturb their reproductive cycle. But after the birds, females are on the nest, most photographers will try to call them out to get a good shot in order to show people what they look like because they are a rainbow in a bird. This is a red-shouldered hawk at my Park Mills Pond right in my neighborhood that I got earlier this month. And he's got the beautiful gleam in its eye, and it spotted a rodent on the ground split seconds after this, and there it is heading for a new meal. This is a Carolina wren. They're very small, but they are probably the loudest creature on the face of the earth for their size. They've got an incredible voice, they're beautiful birds, and they've really got an attitude. And this one's looking at me in a very questioning way. I kind of like this pose, and it was in beautiful light. This is a red-headed woodpecker. I got this picture in Ohio also. We have these on the near the Oklahoma border and out in East Texas, maybe even down by the coast, but we don't have them around Austin and in Central Texas. And the red on the head is absolutely stunning. They're beautiful birds, and you can hear their calls before you see them quite often. Here's another green heron, and he's all slicked back. He's in really nice dappled light below some trees along the rocky shoreline of Mills Pond. I just really like the way the lighting was on this one, and you can see some of the green in the wings, and they've got beautiful brown color all throughout them too, with those yellow eyes. This is a mama pied-billed grebe and her young one, and I think she's saying, "Just wait until your father gets home, young man." These are usually very solitary birds most of the year, and then you'll see them in pairs when it's time to mate, and you'll also see them raising their young. But for probably 9/10 of the year, they're loners, where other ducks are usually in flocks on the water. But these guys are kind of lonely little guys. This is Eastern Towhee that I got at Commons Ford Ranch along Lake Austin. And normally in our part of Texas, we see what are called spotted towhees. This one is a little more rare around here. It's called an eastern towhee, beautiful red eyes, and a little different pattern on the wings is what makes it different. In West Texas, we also have western towhees, and we also have what are called canyon towhees. So there's 4 different kinds that I'm aware of that I'm familiar with. This bird on a wire is an American kestrel. This is the smallest American falcon. They're much smaller than peregrine falcons or merlins, which is another type. And they're usually sitting on wires or on top of trees, looking for some movement down below so that they can snag some kind of a meal, a large insect, or maybe a little rodent. And one of their biggest problems is predation from other raptors. They'll be sitting there like this, and then a bigger hawk will come up and nail them from behind. They're not in any danger. They're very prevalent between Austin and when you drive down to the coast. You see them on almost every wire and every phone pole. This is a lesser goldfinch this time of year. They're another one of the migrators, and many people see these on their feeders as well. This bird is down at the coast. It's called a laughing gull, and it had caught this fish split seconds before because you can see the water still draining out of the little fish. I was pretty happy to get this shot. This is a Blackburnian warbler. There's probably 35 to 40 types of warblers, and they all come through Mills Pond where I live. I mean, it's a really good place for warblers during the spring and the fall migrations. And during the spring migration, I saw another nature photographer at this tree, and he pointed it out. And I'm forever grateful that I was able to get this great picture of one. Got a hummingbird in flight. I typically try to have a little slower shutter speed than other photographers, maybe a 1600th of a second, so that the wings are just a little blurry to show you some motion. And then the eye and the head and the body are motionless for a good picture. I really don't like that look when the whole bird is totally motionless. You kind of wonder what's holding it up in flight. This is a golden cheek warbler, and we have a wonderful sanctuary here around Austin called Baker Sanctuary that the Travis County Audubon Society runs. I'm a member of Audubon. It's a locked facility where you need to be a member with a gate code to get in. And I was blessed to get this picture of this guy. They're not really in danger, but they're kind of on a list where they're definitely being protected right now, but they're not endangered. This is a red-bellied woodpecker at my pond, and even though they have that name, you very rarely see a little bit of red on the belly. And you can see just a little bit on this one in beautiful dawn light. Yet another green heron. This one speared the fish with both the top and bottom of its beak, and shortly after this, he had to march over to the shore, deposit the fish on dry land, and then throw it up in the air and swallow it head first. This one's also got a little bit of that Elvis look. This is a magnolia warbler, another black and white warbler. There's so many different variations, and I take the pictures and then I kind of worry about identifying them or having friends that are really into warblers help me out with it. The internet is really a great resource now at helping with that. This was gorgeous. It was right after a rain. You can see water droplets on these leaves, and just really happy with this shot. This is a malachite kingfisher. This is in Kenya. It's a very colorful kingfisher that they're not very big, but they do what kingfishers do. They perch on reeds or small plants like this right above the water on the shoreline, and then they'll dive down and get a fish. Their diet is primarily fish as well. And yet another green heron, this one in flight with gorgeous gold in between the feathers on the wings. Just love these birds. And this is a yellow-crowned night heron who's all ruffled up. Usually they're smoothed down, but we've got several of those at our pond as well. It's one of the smaller herons, also a shorebird, and they eat mostly crawfish and fish. So, and then just recently, I was able to get these pictures. I did this presentation earlier in the month on almost no notice, and I was able to tune it up and get some better pictures in here for this one. And I was blessed to get even more pictures over the last week or two. So these are hot off the presses. This is a osprey at Lake Georgetown. I got this picture from my boat shortly after dawn. Here it is right after it lifted off of that branch as it begins to fly. And here it is a split second later. They've got incredible yellow eyes. They look like they have mascara around the eyes. They also have a wrist in the middle of their wing where their wings can fold, and they can dive at a very high speed. Only a peregrine falcon is any faster, but they'll get up 100, 200 feet above the water and spot a bass and then do a power dive where you can barely keep up with your camera. It's so fast. Sometimes going below the surface up to 3 feet deep and then coming up with a fish. This is another one just as it lifts off, and you can see their talons that are very unique. They have 4 toes, 2 on the back, 3 on the front, and it only takes 1 talon and 1 leg to hold a pretty large fish. Once they've gotten a hold of a fish, there's no letting go. If they have it with both talons, there's no way the fish is going to get away, and they can carry a very large fish. This is a belted kingfisher at Roy G. Guerrero Park along the Colorado River east of downtown Austin. And that's always a very hard picture to get because they're very fast, they're very erratic, and just like that colorful malachite kingfisher, they do the same thing. They dive down and get fish and then take them back to a perch to consume them. And this is 2 Egyptian geese at Lake Georgetown in the past week. This is a mama Egyptian goose coming in for a landing. And you can see Junior is on 1 leg where he's shying away. He thinks he's going to get scrunched, but he didn't. Mama's pretty good. Next, we have flowers and insects that are part of God's creation. This is a zinnia at one of my friends that has a place with lots of flowers near the pond. Always lets me get pictures of them. He also had the sulfur cosmos, is what this one's called. This is a Texas spiny lizard at a bird blind, and look at how he blends in. He's got a very long tail that goes all the way to the right edge of the picture, but he blends right in with his surroundings. These are 2 dragonflies skimming the water. I call it flying united as they mate in the air. But you can see where the tail of the one that's lower there is actually stirring up the surface of the water. This is a painted lady butterfly right after it lifted off from a peach blossom. Not a very easy shot to get, a butterfly in flight. This is our state flower, the bluebonnet. We had a wonderful crop of those this spring. Probably one of the best years I've seen. These are daisies. This is a common buckeye, one of my favorite butterflies. Got beautiful markings. This is a dahlia at a tea plantation outside of Nairobi, Kenya, where I was this summer. And one of my friends years ago won a photo contest with a picture of the back of a sunflower. 99% of people take a picture of the front of a sunflower, and the back is very interesting. This is the back of a dahlia, and I think that it's absolutely outstanding. All the colors and the textures that are there, and it was in very good light. This is a different kind of a dahlia, a yellow one. It's got a pollinator there getting some pollen. This dragonfly is called a common whitetail. We see a lot of those. I love the translucent wings where you can see the background right through the wings. This plant is called a pickerel weed. You see those along shores where there are lily pads, shallow, calm water, and invariably they have bumblebees on them. This is a honeybee on a rock rose, and one reason I picked this picture is the shadows in this, in the harsh sunlight, are really good. The shadow of the bee and of the center of the flower down on the petal. And this is yet another painted lady. I just love them. They're a beautiful butterfly, and that's on a bluebonnet. Next, we have favorites of mine from the last year or so that have been in photo contests. Some of them have been winners. This was from September 24th of 2023. This is a hailstorm that blew out 2 skylights on my house and forced me to get a new roof. Thankfully, insurance took care of it, but it was baseball-sized hail. This is from my drone, and all the color in those clouds is from not only the sunset that was going on at that time, but also lightning inside of the clouds. I tried to get pictures with still photos, which is almost impossible, and so I switched over to high definition video at 60 frames a second, and I was able to get about 2 minutes of video before the National Weather Service put an alert on my cell phone. It said take cover immediately, and it turned out that was true. I needed to. But anyway, that was a lot of work because every time I saw a flash in the video, I would back up a second or two in my editing software, and then I had to look at 60 frames for every second until I found one with lightning. And I was blessed to find 21 pictures that had lightning in them. I think this is probably the best one of them. It's entered in a major photo contest right now as a 24 by 36 canvas print. And this was a winner of a People's Choice Award in my local photo club. The theme last month, was action. And so you can see a lot of action in this photo with the water all being stirred up, just as this gadwall duck lifted off from near our old airport. This is a turkey in flight. I've seen them fly 2 or 3 times in my years. It's not a real normal thing, but this one jumped off a cliff at a state park and glided down like the space shuttle, where it had one chance to land, and it landed right at my feet. And it was pretty amazing. This is a ruby crown kinglet with its hair on fire. It's not often you can get that crown to show like that. Quite often you don't see any orange at all. Here's another painted bunting, and this is in its most stunning colors, where you have that beautiful green and yellow on the back of the wings. The blue is absolutely intent on the head, offset by the orange eye ring, and then all that gorgeous orangish red on the rest of the bird. It's absolutely stunning. This is a wood duck at my local pond in the middle of its molt. When it's looking very good during mating season, it will have a metallic green helmet that goes all the way down the back of its neck and a white tassel on its head, and it will have absolutely gorgeous feathers throughout its body and on its wings. So this is about the worst this one's ever going to look, but it looks pretty good even there. This is a Great blue heron at Lake Georgetown from my boat at dawn when it had absolutely gorgeous light on it as it flew by at eye level. This took the July picture of the month for our local NBC station, KXAN. Generally, about 300 pictures are entered every month of weather, like the size of hailstones or various clouds or sunrises or sunsets. And the photo editor at the station picks 10 pictures every month, and the public votes on them. And this one took first place in July. I've been in the top 10 3 or 4 times in the last year, so that's a real blessing. This is a great blue heron dragging one toe across the Colorado River as it's coming in for a landing over to the left on the shore. And this is another green heron that I call this one Bad Hair Day. It just gotten all wet and it was shaking the water off to dry out. And finally, this was one of my best pictures of all time. I got this in Africa. I was taking a picture sequence in flight of that African fish eagle we saw earlier, and my driver Jeff yelled out, "Dave, the crocodile's starting to move." I turned around and just started firing away, and I got it the split second after it caught this fish. I've got a whole sequence of it figuring out how to eat it and swallowing it, but I call this picture "Oh No." And this one has been in a photo contest where the theme was monochrome. So it had to be sepia or black and white or some such like just one color. And I turned this one into a black and white, and it had beautiful texture on the scales on the fish and on the crocodile. But you can tell that the fish had no idea this was coming. And I would really like to know how the crocodile did that. And I would like to know how I got that shot because it's a 1 in a million shot. So finally, while we can see many of the attributes of God and His creation, it's only a starting point as we witness to other people of other faiths, non-believers or seekers. The discussion has to proceed from there on how awesome our God is, and we need to make a clear, intentional proclamation of the gospel so that people understand what we believe and might be attracted to it. But we always need to do that in love and humility. And my rallying cry as a missionary that goes to Nairobi every year to do vision clinics to help the people in the slums for free, some of the poorest people in the world, is that the last words of Jesus before he ascended to heaven are from Matthew 28. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. Surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." So I'm a big believer in last words, and this is our rallying cry for anybody that is an evangelist or a missionary. So we're called to spread the faith, but we're called to do it in a loving way, and I typically do that by being a friend first, and then eventually people ask me why I am the way I am or why I do what I do. And when I'm asked an honest question, then I'm able to give an honest answer, which is a polite way of sharing your faith. Finally, there's several questions I would like you to think about after seeing all of this diversity that I've shown, all the incredible difference in birds and animals and the sky, the moon, landscape, sunrises, sunsets. You might think about, when did you feel closest to God when you were in nature? I've seen the northern lights absolutely spectacularly from northern Minnesota. That was one for me. Other times in the mountains when it's a clear night and you can almost touch the stars. And always when I'm out on the water. I love being out on the water. And how can we use creation to witness to others? I think I discussed that a little bit just a minute ago, but you might try and think about how sharing a love of nature with others might help you to talk about your faith. And will you please stop and smell the roses more now that you've seen everything that I've been allowed to see over the last year? I've been serious about nature photography since somewhere between 2009, my first trip to Kenya. I've been there 22 times and probably been on over 40 safaris. So I've seen lots and lots of nature. And the same thing with birding. I do mostly birds around Central Texas. And it would be easy to think if those birds were not there before I was tuned in and they just all of a sudden arrived once I got interested in it, but I know very well that they've always been there. And it's a good thing for us to get tuned in. When I'm doing my nature walks, quite often people ask me, how do I see what I see? While they're looking at their cell phone. And I say, well, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm actually in tune with what's going on around me. So I hope this has inspired you to do a little bit more of that. It's wonderful to get out in nature. It's a cure for a lot of what ails you, and it really helps you get more connected to God. So thank you very much. Blessings on the rest of your day.